Well, welcome to the 700 Club. A list of proposals by the Biden administration appear to give the World Health Organization the right to tell the U.S. what to do in a pandemic. The proposals could be incorporated into a global pandemic treaty.
Some members of Congress are calling on the White House to pull out of the WHO altogether. Others think the concerns are overblown. Dale Hurd explains.
The World Health Organization's 75th World Health Assembly is underway in Geneva, Switzerland, and one of the items on the agenda are amendments to the WHO's international health regulations. There's been widespread concern that amendments offered by the Biden administration would hand over U.S. national sovereignty on matters of health to the WHO. They would allow the WHO to declare a health emergency in the United States, require the U.S. to report to an international compliance committee on whether it was obeying WHO directives, and would create an enforcement mechanism to essentially punish nations that don't follow the WHO's directives.
And that would mean whether it's social distancing, whether businesses are essential or not, whether churches are essential, lockdowns, different kinds of treatment, all of that would be under the jurisdiction and sovereignty of an international body and no longer under the United States of America.
Representative Chris Smith, ranking member of the House Global Health Subcommittee, called it an egregious breach of constitutional principle. Adding to suspicion about the amendments is that they were sent to the WHO in January, apparently without a public announcement, and were only discovered online last month. The wording of the amendments would certainly seem to give the WHO authority over the U.S. government. But how much teeth would the amendments actually have? The WHO Director General has branded claims that the amendments are a power grab, distortions, and disinformation, saying the WHO could not override the sovereignty of member nations.
WHO is an expression of member state-owned sovereignty, and WHO is entirely what the sovereign 194 member states want WHO to be.
And a Georgetown University law professor who helped write the international health regulations that the Bush White House signed on to in 2005 said the WHO only has the power to make recommendations. It could not force a country to allow WHO staff to interfere with its public health decision-making. Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs at the Family Research Council, says while the amendments offered are disturbing, even if the international health regulations had the force of a treaty, which they do not, the U.S. Constitution would have the final say and not the WHO.
It does not trump the Constitution. Even in the case of a treaty, it's similar to a statute passed by Congress in its level of authority. The Constitution still trumps that.
And a new report says the amendments are now not expected to even be decided on this week. There is, however, concern the amendments could be incorporated into a new global pandemic treaty, which the WHO has been calling for. Republican Senators Steve Daines and Tom Cotton sent a letter to the White House Friday calling for the U.S. to leave the WHO as it did under President Trump, saying the World Health Organization absolutely cannot be trusted with more power. It's clear from several of the WHO's own statements that it wants more power to fight future pandemics. What's not clear is if the proposed amendments would grant it the power some say it will. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, I'm not exactly trusting of the WHO to fight future pandemics just because of their performance during COVID. They actually congratulated China, and they seemed to bend over backwards to not offend China in all of their discoveries, even though China at that point was actively concealing their research. We're not releasing it to the world medical community. And when you start understanding that was a political move and not a medical move, then it makes you question, should we allow power to something that is quite obviously political? They're not seemingly following medical advice. They're being very political in their decisions. I don't want any part of that, and I don't want U.S. sovereignty ever under anything like that. Well, in other news, an independent investigation finds that leaders of the Southern Baptist Commission failed to properly look into allegations of sex abuse over a 20-year period. Ephraim Graham has that story from our CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, an SBC task force authorized the report from Guidepost Solution and at its annual meeting last year. Guidepost investigated how the SBC Executive Committee handled allegations of sexual abuse from January 2000 to June 2021. It found committee members ignored reports of abuse, discouraged investigations, and did not share the allegations with trustees. It also said there is no indication those accused of abuse were removed from their positions. Furthermore, the report says those who brought allegations and criticized the lack of action were accused of wanting to harm the convention and to profit from lawsuits. SBC President Ed Litton said Sunday he is grieved to my core for the victims, and I pray Southern Baptists will begin preparing today to take deliberate action to address these failures. The committee will hold a special meeting Tuesday to begin discussion on implementing reforms. The Justice Department is announcing new guidelines, grants, and steps to raise awareness about hate crimes across the country after the attack that killed 10 African Americans at a Buffalo supermarket. The DOJ is investigating the Buffalo massacre as a hate crime and an act of racially motivated violent extremism.
Unfortunately, we are gathered today in the shadow and the wake of another horrific attack. If it's possible to even further redouble our efforts, something like this can only cause us to do so.
Attorney General Merrick Garland recently unveiling $10 million in new federal grant money to help fight hate crimes. The men and women in blue are not immune from the surge in violent crime across America. More and more police are becoming crime victims. The FBI and law enforcement are trying to shine a light on the problem and come up with solutions. CBN's Brody Carter has more.
We have to look at how police officers now are being attacked. They're being attacked simply because of the uniforms they wear.
73 police officers were killed on the job in 2021. That's nearly a 60% jump in police officer deaths than the previous year. Retired Dallas Police Sergeant Trey Penny is president of the National Fallen Officer Foundation and says violence aimed at police is unlike anything he's seen before.
86 ambush-style attacks last year, 26 officers killed. This year alone, we've already had 26 ambush attacks and 7 officers killed.
So why the increase? FBI Director Christopher Wray says some of it's tied to an increase in violent crimes as a whole. In 2020, murder jumped 29% in the U.S., with nearly 5,000 more people killed than 2019. Possible reasons include more juveniles committing violent crimes, increased gun trafficking, and an alarming number of some of the worst criminals getting back on the streets.
Last year, officers were being killed at a rate of almost 1 every 5 days.
The FBI arrested some 15,000 violent gang members last year. Christopher Wray says they're working with task forces and local law enforcement agencies nationwide to try and mitigate this surge in violence. Still, gun violence remains at an all-time high. Researchers for the New England Journal of Medicine found gun violence increased during COVID. There's no clear correlation. Still, some 45,000 firearm-related deaths took place in 2020. Sergeant Penny believes social media is a big part of the problem.
I've been a proponent for regulated social media because of the online radicalism. You know, dating back to the 2016 shooting attack in Dallas, Texas, where 5 officers were killed, and like I said, two of the officers were really good friends of mine. It would not have occurred that way had it not been for the social media online radicalization. Now these platforms are being used to incite violence across the country against police officers, and you have a lot of people, especially on the political spectrum, that have used this free speech narrative, saying that people need to be able to express their opinion.
In the worst cases, Sergeant Penny says those opinions lead to tragedy. Most recently in a Buffalo grocery store where the shooter targeted black people, killing 10 and injuring 3 based on a racist ideology investigators believe the shooter found online. Sergeant Penny filed a lawsuit against Facebook, Twitter, and Google in connection with the 2016 Dallas shooting. The courts let them go. But it's not stopping law enforcement from finding solutions to serve and protect the men and women who've sworn to do the same.
We will follow the facts wherever they lead, to whomever they lead, no matter who likes it.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
A reprieve for law enforcement on the southern border. Officials were expecting an increase in attempted illegal crossings if the planned lifting of a COVID immigration policy went forward. The policy allows the rapid expulsion of migrants for public health reasons. The Biden administration wanted to end Title 42 today, but a federal judge blocked the plan Friday. The judge agreed with 24 state attorneys general who argued the administration did not follow proper procedure in canceling the policy. Turning now to Asia, where President Biden made a surprisingly strong statement regarding America's commitment to help Taiwan if China invades. At a news conference in Tokyo, a reporter asked the president if U.S. assistance to Taiwan would include a military response.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
A White House official said the president did not announce a change in U.S. policy and that he was only repeating a decades-long commitment to provide Taiwan with military aid to defend itself against an invasion by China. China expressed strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition to the president's statement. Gordon?
Well, this is a sea change in American foreign policy. You go back to 1979, and the U.S. changed its position towards Taiwan. There used to be a mutual defense agreement, but in 1979, all of that changed, and there was no commitment on the part of the U.S. to come to Taiwan's defense in the event of an invasion or an attack by China. That was applauded at the time by China, and it was the result of all the détente and, you know, let's be friends with China and let's see if China will open up. What's unusual is the President of the United States has come out with this statement and has done it instead of formally through the normal diplomatic channels to do it in a press conference. The reason why he did it, and this is sort of all coming to light as a result of the comment, is he's standing next to the Prime Minister of Japan. And instead of an agreement with Taiwan, what has come out is there's an agreement with Japan to defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese attack. And that agreement allows U.S. Marines to occupy uninhabited islands in Japan in order to provide a defense, a mutual defense, against a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. These things shouldn't come out this way in news conferences. And I said during the Trump administration, we shouldn't be governed by 3 a.m. tweets. I'll say to the Biden administration, please don't let us be governed or let our foreign policy be announced in the middle of press conferences. This isn't the proper way to do it.